Thank you, General Wood, and thank you, General Shea and General Zabel, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. DARPA, I think, and DISA are working better than ever. Recently, General Lynn gave one of my program teams a coin for our work on network defense, and we're transitioning that now to DISA and some of the Army cyber teams that are out there. So looking forward to continuing that relationship. The DISA mission is incredibly important. You actually have to take the technology that we demonstrate and make it real for our networks and to secure the DoD system-wide. So I definitely appreciate the mission. I'd like to speak with you all today about a difficult national security challenge that our nation faces, and that of securing our networks, our data, and more broadly, any system that runs code, public or private, from cyber threats. I'll discuss the threat and some of the technology efforts we at DARPA are investing in to bring greater levels of security to our systems, and then close with some thoughts on how the country can do better in this area moving forward. Then hopefully I can answer any questions you might have for me. I'm happy also, I've targeted this talk towards cybersecurity, but I'm happy to talk about swarms of UAVs or hypersonics or anything else you want to talk about that we're doing in the question phase. Before I cover some of the threats, let me start off with some good news, I think, for a change. The problems our nation faces in cybersecurity have received enormous attention recently, and the President has stated that making America cyber secure will be a very high priority in his administration. He's called for a national plan to address the problem, and we're working actively with other elements in the federal government to respond to this request. There's also strong bipartisan support, I think, in Congress for work in this critical area. For several years now, bills in both the House and Senate have been jointly sponsored. The bottom line is, I think there's a lot of momentum in the halls of government to solve this problem, and I hope so also in the private sector. And that's good, because the threat is real and is growing. The problems America faces in the cyber domain have clearly increased and are among the most serious facing the nation. Hacking is no longer the domain of bored high school kids. As recent reports from our intelligence community and others point out, cyber attacks of various kinds are now coming from skilled experts employed by foreign nations, terrorist organizations, and cyber criminals. Cyber espionage has greatly expanded, and the constant stream of attacks from Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are real, to name just a few of those. I don't see a clicker, so can you give me the next slide? Yeah, there you go. One part of the problem involves the theft of data, including email, personal data, credit card information, as well as intellectual property and other resources. As we've seen, the computer servers of both the government as well as commercial enterprises have all been vulnerable to attack. Some attacks, which have received considerable media attention, have targeted the Office of Personnel Management, where millions of personnel records, including very personal security clearance information, was stolen. Sony Pictures, where the theft of data and email led to the cancellation of a major motion picture, and the server at the DNC, which has been the subject of an extraordinary amount of attention and discussion related to the last presidential campaign. I'd like to give you just one example of how attacks like these are executed, since it can be fairly opaque. Can I have the next slide? It can be fairly opaque to the average American who doesn't know that much about cyber, and I include myself in that group. Assume a cyber criminal would like to get your credit card number and expiration date. That would mean he would need to get a keylogger program that records which computer keyboard keys you typed on your computer, which could record that data and send that data back to him. How might he do that? Well, he could send you a phishing email, an email that looks like it's from a person you know on a topic you have an interest in. And that email would include a website link for you to click on. Once you clicked on the website link, your browser would come up and go to the website. a website running a version of Adobe Flash, for instance, which has a known vulnerability and can be exploited. That program could actually place the malicious keylogger software on your computer, all of this happening without your knowledge. Military, government, and commercial systems have all connected to the internet and are all vulnerable to these types of attacks. A serious cyber attack could jeopardize national security, military operations, the power grid, and the financial sector. These are indeed serious concerns, and recent experience has shown that this is far from science fiction. These are very real problems that require our best minds and technologies to solve and protect against. So how is the nation going to fix the cybersecurity problem? To be honest, we at DARPA think there is no silver bullet that can fix everything. Even a combination of the most advanced technology cannot solve the problems America faces in the cyber domain entirely. But can technology help? And more specifically, how can my agency, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, help? DARPA, first known as ARPA, was created by President Eisenhower in 1958 as a response to the Russians launching the world's first satellite, Sputnik. Please, next slide. As space was the major technology challenge at the time. DARPA's mission was to prevent technological surprise, like Sputnik, from happening to the US again. One of the ways we found to prevent technological surprise is to create some technological surprise of our own, keeping the US ahead of our adversaries. Today we have active projects exploring unmanned underwater vehicles, robotics, synthetic biology, neurotechnology, low-cost commercial space satellites and launch vehicles, hypersonics, and yes, cybersecurity, to name just a few. Many of you are probably aware that DARPA was the birthplace of the internet, so yes, in some ways we're responsible for this mess. A pretty big technological surprise. The first login in 1969 on the original ARPANET took place through a connection between UCLA and the Stanford Research Institute at the time. What began as a DARPA research project and the creation of technological surprise turned into what many see as the largest technology revolution in the history of mankind. Cyberspace has grown to become a worldwide resource in many ways that no one, even at DARPA, ever imagined. The net is now an infrastructure that supports all aspects of modern life, ranging from critical national security requirements to commerce, entertainment, finance, healthcare, social interaction, and unfortunately, crime, espionage, and cyber warfare. So what is DARPA doing today to create technologies that protect our data, our networks, and our national security when it comes to these threats? Next slide, please. At DARPA, our security research goals consist of three focus areas right now in the cybersecurity domain. Hardened systems against cyber attack, so in other words, building in the security right up front. Operating through cyber attack, managing that insecurity, and then winning in the cyber domain, and by that we mean planning and acting and being able to win. I'd like to give you an example project from each of these areas and then tell you about some plans to bring some of these individual projects together and do a much better job of protecting our networks and systems at scale. So if I could have the next slide. As part of our hardening systems against attack, DARPA ran what we call the Cyber Grand Challenge last August, or the CGC. The CGC was very much in the vein of DARPA's self-driving car challenges of the last decade, and that we challenged the world to do something that had never been done before. In this case, that was to defend a network and counterattack an adversary's network in a matter of minutes without human intervention. Only machines playing machines in a game of capture the flag. 7 finalists brought their cyber reasoning systems to DEF CON last August and demonstrated the ability of each of their systems to automatically identify and address software flaws to maintain its own correct operation while scanning the CGC network to identify and exploit vulnerabilities in the other systems. This changes the idea of zero-day exploits and causes one to think in terms of 0-second or 0-minute exploits. Can I have the next slide? This represents a true paradigm change in the way we look at cyber. Even the best talent patching and repairing today's zero-day exploits can run upwards of 300 days, a number which is simply not acceptable. The slide here is just trying to show that when Blue deploys software, Red spends time discovering the flaw and building an attack. Blue then discovers the attack and fixes the attack over a long period of time beyond that. What Cyber Grand Challenge showed us is that in the width of that red line, we could discover the flaw, build a defense against it, and attack the adversary. Just, really shrinking the time available in the cybersecurity space. So following on the path of breaking success demonstrated in CGC, we'll be looking for ways to rapidly move this experiment into an operational capability. America cannot be safe and secure when it takes close to a year to detect new exploits and develop protective measures. Google and Microsoft, for instance, are already employing some of these techniques and moving the technology forward. We're also transitioning it to other parts of the government. And the hardware used in the Cyber Grand Challenge has also been transitioned to other parts of the government to continue to work with this technology. You can imagine using it before we deploy a software product to test that software product against many different exploits and using it in a sort of a pre-defense way as well. So I have the next slide. As part of our operating through cyber attacks focus area, we're developing technologies to rapidly detect, isolate, and characterize cyber attacks on the electric power grid. A widespread and prolonged disruption of electric power would have severe economic and human costs for the United States. It would also hamper military mobilization and logistics, impair the ability of the U.S. to project force, and pursue diplomatic solutions during an international crisis. The goal of our program is to, without a priori security upgrades or utility deployments prior to an attack, use skilled cyber and power engineers to restore power within 7 working days after a cyber attack that overwhelms conventional recovery operations. Our program is working in anomaly detection technologies that achieve sufficient sensitivity with low false alarm rates in a very heterogeneous power grid. There's some, I think the count is over 3,500 different grids to deal with. We're also working network isolation and threat characterization technologies for cyber systems that include normal IT as well as integrated control systems, hardware and software. As we work through developing these technologies, there are many policy issues that arise in this space. Local control versus federal control over the power grid. Can a cyber first responder who maybe is a trained National Guardsman touch a utility's computer system? And just what is DoD's role in any of this anyway? How involved does the DoD want to be in protecting the nation's power grid, even if they're allowed to be? Next chart. And finally, as part of our winning in the cyber domain, Plan X is our first generation cyber mission framework tool to enable mission commanders, planners, and operators to collaborate, understand, plan, and manage cyber operations in real time against large-scale and dynamic network environments at both tactical and strategic levels. A couple other programs in this space are Enhanced Attribution and the Network Defense Program. Enhanced Attribution's goal is to make opaque, malicious cyber adversary actions and individual cyber operator attribution transparent by providing visibility into all aspects of malicious cyber actions. And Net Defense has developed algorithms and data analysis tools that enable cyber situational awareness for identifying illicit behavior in networks. And this is the program that we see now transitioning to Cybercom. Where I think we are headed at DARPA in the winning in the cyber domain set of programs is what I'm loosely referring to as creating a cyber system of systems approach. By that I mean taking many of the technology tools and programs that I've discussed today and putting them together into sort of a national network defense system for cybersecurity and potentially a cyber warfare combat system for cyber response. Focusing on just the defense side right now, the defense system would be voluntary, I think. Domains and specific networks could sign up, and it would enable real-time monitoring of hundreds of US internet domains to discover botnets, understand the command and control status of servers, correlate adversary probing of US enterprise networks, provide indications and warning of enterprise network compromises, and large-scale data breach exfiltration, and finally, coordinate national response to adversary activities on US networks and domains. The likelihood of an adversary being discovered on our networks by such a defensive system and being able to attribute adverse cyber actions to that adversary will have a strong deterrent effect, I believe, on future attackers. And one sort of gate to getting to such a system, I think, is our new program that we have out, if you go to our website and look, called CHASE, Cyber Hunting, let's see what it stands for, Cyber Hunting at Scale. And this is really looking at taking what we've done on network defense and scaling it up to a DoD, to the DoD. And we're working with DISA and Cybercom on that new program. But it's out there right now. And if you have good ideas in that space, please see the broad agency announcement and respond. So as many of us technologists know, technology development often leads policy development. And the cyber domain is no exception to this rule. Beyond the major technical programs I just discussed, DARPA has developed technologies like active authentication, the idea that the computer recognizes you as you. No need for passwords, which closes a major vulnerability having to do with the human part of the cyber ecosystem. We've developed separate secure kernels using formal methods to prevent hackers from exploiting embedded systems and software. And we're continuing to work encryption technologies, including something called homomorphic encryption, which allows operations and calculations on encrypted data. These three technical developments alone could make our data, our networks, and our military and commercial platforms, think our automobiles, so much more secure from cyber attack than they are today. I mentioned encryption. Encryption is an interesting technology area that has already led to a broad discussion about the perceived trade-offs between security and privacy. Clearly, the technologies related to advanced encryption offer great promise in giving users back control of their information and protecting their privacy. In 2014, DARPA initiated the Brandeis program, named after the late Justice Louis Brandeis, often regarded as America's first leading legal authority on privacy. The Brandeis program seeks to develop the technical means to protect the private and proprietary information of individuals and enterprises. The vision of the program is to break the tension that we often see between maintaining individual privacy and allowing law enforcement, commercial, civil organizations to harness the huge value inherent in large data sets. Rather than having to choose between security and privacy, Brandeis aims to build a third option, enabling a safe and predictable sharing of data in which privacy is preserved. So the potential impact of Brandeis, I think, is dramatic. Assured data privacy can open the doors to personal medicine, effective smart cities, detailed global data, and fine-grained internet awareness. We continue to work with technical experts on the program, but also legal experts from across the spectrum to include civil rights groups, law professors, judges, and others on this important program. It's still early, it's basic research, but we have high hopes for finding a solution there. So I'd like to wrap up the talk at a sort of a philosophical level, and this is where technologists can get into trouble. But here it goes. And the attacks I've seen and heard about, largely in the commercial sector, but also some in the government sphere, organizations seem more willing sometimes to accept some risk of attack rather than spend the time and money up front to build in higher levels of security. The consequence of failing to secure one's systems has not been high enough yet to warrant the upfront security investment. An infiltrated company or government agency pays a year's worth of credit protection for the employee or the customer affected. The poor souls may lose their identity and life moves on. I think the incentives for both companies and the government to protect their customers or employees from cyber attack have to change. What if a company, and if I could have the next slide, what if a company that produces a software product receives something equivalent to a good housekeeping seal of approval for producing a secure product? What if customers were made aware of unsecure products and the companies that made them? I'm pretty sure customers would buy the more secure products in today's world especially. Philosophically, I'm opposed to government overregulating any industry. In my view, overregulation stifles innovation and invention. But the government does impose some regulation to keep Americans safe. Think crash tests for automobiles. Should the government think about the equivalent of a crash test for cyber before a product, software or hardware, is put out on the internet? I don't know. I'm just asking the question. And how can a growing cyber insurance industry change some of this behavior, potentially? Insurance will place a cost on a firm's cyber risk through a calculated premium. And the prospect of a reduced premium could encourage firms to take steps to mitigate risk. Also, insurers could help firms reduce their losses and build in more security by providing insight from claims across their client base. These are questions technologists like me can't answer for our society. In the end, the American people as a whole will have to decide. But one thing I do know is that when our private and public sector come together to solve a problem, and I certainly include private and public universities in this group, we can be a powerful force together in providing technologies and capabilities for our national security. Cybersecurity is a problem for all of us now, so let's work together as we have in the past in other areas to solve this problem for the American people. Thanks for your attention. Now I'm happy to answer questions or talk about swarming UAVs, whatever you guys want to talk about.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. We do have a few questions coming in from the audience. The first one is, can you discuss how DARPA promotes or uses tech sharing or collaboration to advance its work?
Sure. We generally hold industry days at the DARPA building, as well as we have a day, I think, coming up this week or next, where our Defense Science Office is, through a meeting in Crystal City, as well as I think on the web, basically explaining what they do, where they're headed, and what their interest areas are, what problems they're trying to solve. And so we do it office by office. There are 6 offices at DARPA. The office that mostly deals with cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, big data analytics is called our Information Innovation Office, I2O. And generally every office, at least once a year, has some sort of collaborative industry day where performers and the program managers from that office get together and talk about the problems we're trying to solve and ideas that the performer base has to solve those problems.
Thank you. As you look across your portfolio, what do you see as the most difficult problem? What problem are you closest to finding a path forward?
Oh, those are kind of, two different questions, the way I'm reading that question. One of the biggest, I think, challenges we have in the national security space right now that we're actually bringing up the chain is hypersonics. Our peer competitors have been working to enable and develop high-speed weapon systems over the last 10, 15 years. DARPA has paved the way in many of those program areas to sort of keep pace, but our peer competitors are making more investment. More people are working in the area, and they're building facilities and infrastructure to develop these types of systems. And so I think that's one of our biggest challenges as a country. DARPA is proposing now to basically recommend a national initiative in this area, and you'll be hearing more about that, I think, in the future. One of the things we're closest to solving, well, I'm not sure if we're close to solving it, but one of the things I think, and I talked a little bit about it in the talk, is bringing artificial intelligence to the cybersecurity problem. I think that's going to be critically important as we move forward. I don't think that throwing more people at the cyber defense, cybersecurity problem is the answer long term. It may be in the short term, but in the long term, things are going to be moving so fast that I think bringing machine learning and machine speed to the cybersecurity problem is going to be absolutely critical. And I think we've made progress through the Cyber Grand Challenge in that space. There's more work to do. The challenge was, we developed an operating system for that challenge, but extending that to real operating systems and millions of lines of code are still challenges that we need to tackle, and we'll be looking at as we develop future programs down the road.
Thank you. With the source of IT R&D funding shifting primarily to industry, how does DARPA remain relevant in the future?
Well, we constantly, the beauty about DARPA is we're constantly getting into areas and out of areas. We're a program agency, project agency, so our projects are about 3 to 5 years long. Our program managers that come to DARPA stay for about 3 to 5 years. And so we will make big bets in areas, technology areas where we see, number one, a huge impact. If we're successful in this program, what kind of impact will we have for national security? That's sort of the first question we ask. But there are areas where there are certainly areas, and artificial intelligence was one, where DARPA had early investment in AI back in the 70s, really through language translation and other applications. And then the commercial sector came along and just sort of swamped our level of investment, and we will get out of that area for a while and watch it grow and be supported in the commercial sector. So we get in and out. We don't have 10, 20-year research activities. Most recently, we have, I'd say the last 5 to 10 years, we have basically been leading the nation in neurotechnology, and neurotechnology applied to restore wounded veterans and provide limbs for them to have restoration. And but lots of talk now about the commercial sector investing billions in the neurotech area. And so if that does come to fruition, that may be an area we step back from.
Thank you. Are there systemic or process problems that prevent DoD from keeping at the front edge of new technology or science? And do you believe we're getting better or worse at keeping up?
Staying at the front edge of science. I think we do a pretty good job at staying at the front edge of science. And I think there's a lot of innovation. I know it because I see it going on not only at DARPA, but in our defense laboratories and across the defense establishment. I think where we have trouble is turning that technology into capability sometimes. And a lot of technology bubbles up, And in terms of the system, there's only so much ability for the system to absorb it and turn it into system capability. And so a lot of things get put on the shelf, a lot of things, and you know, DARPA's always facing this problem. We tend to push on disruptive technologies that sort of change the game and change the way the services do business. So we're constantly running up against, you know, service infrastructure that doesn't want to change necessarily, or has good reasons, logistics reasons, other reasons why it would be hard for them to change. But I think the system problem is more going from technology demonstration to real capability, not innovation and not new ideas.
Thank you. How do you defend against the user who clicks on that link or opens that attachment?
Good question. Education, I think, is one. We try and educate at least the people we have at DARPA on what to do, what not to do. We run exercises that are unknown to the DARPA community, and have done a lot better over the years in terms of trying to get people to look before they click and to think before they click, I guess I would say. But yeah, there's definitely a human element to cybersecurity and cyber defense, and that's a constant battle. I think I mentioned active authentication, getting away from passwords. If you could have a computer just recognize you as you, based on the way you type on the keyboard or other methods, that would be huge, because you wouldn't have to write down all those passwords we have to write down, because there's 45 you have to keep in your mind. So.
Okay. Can you elaborate on the Brandeis project? How are you approaching the data sharing aspect in particular?
As I said, it's still a research project. I would recommend, rather than trying to answer that in detail, you go on the website. There'll be a little description of Brandeis and the program manager's name. If you have interest in working in that space, our program managers all have, I'll tell you a little secret, they all have some additional funds that they can look at new ideas, even though they've got a program started. There is some flexibility. If you come in with a great idea in say the privacy versus security space, that program manager, and if they like the idea after a conversation with you, we can do something called a seedling, which is about $500K effort to go look and explore the idea, study it, and see if we could turn it into a real program. So I would encourage whoever asks the question, go to the website, look at Brandeis, and get in a conversation with the PM, who's the real expert on the latest stuff they've got going on there.
Thank you. How open is DARPA to adopting international standards and frameworks, such as ISO 29101, in implementing encryption for improved privacy?
Wow. I can't answer that question. We generally aren't very active in the standards business, just because most of our projects we're trying to do are trying to blow up the typical way business is done. And so I can't answer that particular question, but I would say, again, get with the Brandeis program manager and figure that one out.
Okay, thank you very much. If machine learning is the key to future, where should the workforce development be focused?
That's a great question. I think, the future of warfare and probably most work is going to be how humans and machines interface with one another, and what the machine does best and what the human does best, and taking advantage of that relationship to get the most productivity and to have the highest performance. And so I would be focusing workforce development on that human-machine interface piece and understanding artificial intelligence and how machines work. We have another program which I didn't talk about called Explainable AI, which is really focused at, AI today. A lot of artificial intelligence today is black box. You have this neural net that you put in the inputs, it spits out an answer, and 90% of the time it's right, but that last 10%, sometimes it really screws up. And so this program called Explainable AI is trying to bring in psychologists and others to understand what's going to make the human comfortable in working with the machine, and what are the things the human has to know about how the machine developed that answer. So it's not just an answer and a probability, it's an answer, and the machine actually says, here's why I came up with this answer, because the cat had pointy ears and whiskers, or whatever the problem set is. So it's an interesting program trying to figure out this human-machine interface and what's going to make the human comfortable with the machine coming up with the answer, at least for part of the problem. We have another program we're starting in the artificial intelligence space looking at how do you trust a machine learning algorithm and a machine that uses AI, and what is the trust and verification, the V&V that you have to go through to understand how that machine is developing the answer and allow you to trust it. So lots of programs in those spaces. I think those are going to lead to better human-machine collaboration and trust, and the ability for humans and machines to work better together. So workforce development, I would be all over getting the human and the machine together for whatever problem you're trying to solve, and working on that relationship.
Thank you. Are you considering collaborating or even sharing sandboxes with industry so that commercial innovation can move in the direction of defense requirements?
Not sure what you mean by sandboxes, other than maybe technical areas, but we have, part of the job of our program managers, they come in, we hire them, they come in, and we almost immediately send them out to go find out what's happening in a research area. So these guys and gals are mostly on the road, trying to understand what people are doing at universities and small companies and large companies. And so there should be a collaboration going on all the time with our program managers in each of their program areas. If you feel like you're not being heard, or there isn't enough outreach, please let us know. You can always send me an email. The website is a great vehicle for seeing what we're doing and why we're doing it, and the new things coming down the pike. For those of you, I just want to mention one new program we also have, which is also out on our web, called CASE, which is Cyber Assured Systems Engineering. So this is a broad agency announcement that's out there on the web right now, looking for ideas in how we build in resiliency, cyber resiliency, into our systems right up front, early in the systems engineering design process. And so today, cyber is sort of an afterthought, or there's one key performance parameter. It's not very detailed in terms of what requirements DoD sends out to the performer base in terms of what they need, what they mean in terms of cyber resilience. So this is a program that's going to build tools, algorithms, tools, design tools that people can use early to develop that cyber resilience early, before we actually put the software system on the system itself. So I know many of you work in that space. That would be a good one to go out and look at.
Thank you. With the results of the Cyber Grand Challenge you mentioned earlier as an example, how can companies help DARPA move faster to solutions and fielded systems?
Well, I think where that one's concerned, some of that technology and understanding that we learned in that challenge program is actually feeding into companies and other government agencies. We also have a new program manager. His name is Dustin Fraze, who is going to come in and tell us what's next after Cyber Grand Challenge and how to scale that up to real and bigger systems. So I would keep a lookout for Dustin Fraze, and if you have ideas in that space, let him know how you think we should take it forward.
Thank you. Do you get any financial backing from private industry for any of your work? If not, why not? Particularly in the area of cyber, where everyone can benefit, not just DoD and government.
Sure. We don't get private industry funding, but one of the things we do a lot of at DARPA is public-private partnerships. So we use something called an Other Transaction Authority, or OTA, which is a non-FAR-based contracting vehicle, which allows us to pool our resources, government resources at DARPA with a private company's resources. We get IRAD rates in doing that, so it's a little less expensive, and it's also, obviously, the private company is putting in some of the money. The company gets to retain many of its rights to the information developed in the program. And I think it's a win-win. We're doing a couple programs in space using that model. I'm trying to think if we have one. I can't be sure, but I don't know if we've used it heavily in the cybersecurity space. We do work a lot with the commercial sector in our cybersecurity programs. We bring in folks, and I'm thinking now small company, but also university folks every summer, and have, for many of our programs, have what we call hackathons, where they come in and we give them a national security problem. It may not have all the details to it, but we ask these folks to then spend 3-4 weeks in Arlington, Virginia, coding solutions, developing tools and techniques to help solve that problem. It works really, really well, and we bring in folks from law enforcement and other DoD organizations to participate. So that's one way we try and build that connection between the public and private sectors. We're a big open source. We believe in open source and using that whenever possible. And depending on the, if it's completely unclassified, we will make that software that comes out of those summer sessions available on our website so others can use it.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. That was our final question. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lieutenant General Bob Wood back to the stage to formally thank Dr. Walker on behalf of AFCEA and our audience.
Well, what a great kickoff, and we thank you, Dr. Walker, for your presentation. I just was struck by a range of technologies and type solutions and the outward-facing nature of DARPA as they're out there collaborating, using that as a key power and a key source of their innovation. It isn't always thought to be that way, but thank you, Dr. Walker, for laying that out, and I'm sure glad DARPA's on our side. Let me just put it that way. And the solutions you provided are certainly gems in our national security. So thank you very much, and let's give Dr. Walker another hand. What we're going to do next, we're now moving into the networking break on the exhibit floor, and that will run until our luncheon, where we'll have Mr. John Shimoni, Senior Vice President and Chief Security Officer of Dell. That begins at noon today, and we'd ask you to be back in your seats at 11:55. At lunch, AFCEA again invites all attendees to take advantage of the opportunity to network with senior leadership. And don't be shy, this opportunity to share ideas and ask questions over lunch. It's a first-come, first-served seating, and seats will be available at tables near the stage marked with purple banners. These tables will be hosted by senior leaders. You can see the seating chart, which will be in the back of this hall for information on seating. During the break, another set of theater sessions will take place in 5 theaters located on the exhibit floor, as shown on the wing boards. And also during break and throughout the day, the Cyber Industry Innovation Showcase will be taking place. As I've mentioned before, this showcase is an opportunity for industry to present and demonstrate cutting-edge solutions to DoD's cybersecurity challenges. After lunch, we have another networking break sponsored by Fortinet. Take advantage of this time on the exhibit floor to visit the booths and view the technologies. And from 3 to 4 here in this room, Ms. Margie Grays, Acting Federal CIO, and Mr. Alfred Rivera, Director of DISA's Development and Business Center, will engage in a fireside chat on acquisition and acquisition innovation. Take advantage of our networking on the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you for attending this morning's keynote. Please clear the room quickly so the catering staff may prepare for today's luncheon.